Hi, everyone. It's been an exciting day for me. So I posted a video today. Actually, I should probably pull up the link to that video. But we launched our tool. I launched my tool, ImageRAG, which lets you sort of control things in the editor in a way that you weren't able to before in the Midjourney editor. And so we sort of get to kind of take advantage of Midjourney's best strengths and then have a lot more control over the things we create. Probably before you watch this live stream, you should jump over and watch that video because it explains a lot of the details about what it is I've created so that you really see exactly what it is, what it's for. And today I want to talk on the live stream, I want to go through exactly what you see and what the experience of using the tool is, because I know the video goes kind of fast. Let me pull up that link really quickly. If you're in the future, I will put it on the card, so it'll be up there, I think. And if you're watching it right now, I will put the link in the chat and pin this to the top of the chat here throughout the live stream. So if you show up, and I need to pin this, if you show up and you haven't seen the video yet, it's a good idea to watch this first. Otherwise, we're kind of going to get started and take a look at the tool that I made and see kind of how it works and, answer any questions that you guys have. So this is ImageRAG. The interface should be pretty straightforward if you're used to something like ChatGPT. You've kind of got here on your left your projects, and anything you've created so far will show up as a project. If you upload images, you can kind of do that. You can obviously create a new project, and that'll be sort of the focus of today. And so I, on a thumbnail, use that little tree guy. So we'll put the Glibatree tree, and that'll be the name of our project for today. So we have the options, and let me just kind of pull some images over to the side so that I can drag things in. But we can kind of drag an image into the canvas here, and they show up. And also, if you don't have an image selected, you're able to drag it directly into here. Hi, Zachary. Nice to see you. Welcome to the stream. What's this for exactly? This is to help you get more control out of the Midjourney editor. This is a tool that I made. There's a linked video in the chat or at the beginning of the stream. If people are in the future, they'll see it in the card. But I want to kind of go through, I went through in the video quickly how everything works. If you watch the video that I posted today, you can kind of understand what the purpose of it is, and that's kind of getting more control over using the Midjourney editor and being able to actually refer to the likeness of characters or objects or magical effects and create cool things. And what I'm doing now is I'm walking through how to use that tool in a slower way so you can really see everything that's going on. And so there's kind of the ability to, and I'll sort of delete this from the project here. So we have one image here. We also have, and I sort of put a few in the thumbnail, we have a little sad version of our guy. I wish OREF was available in the editor, right? That would make it a lot more possible to do the things that I was trying to, and it becomes a lot more powerful. Hey, Lewis. Yeah, so I'm going over the tool. We talked in the comments for a little bit. But I am trying to go slowly and make sure that everyone knows how this works. So I'll sort of throw a third one in. And so the first feature that you'll notice if you're using the tool is the ability to build stitches, right? So you can kind of make a selection within an image. So your image panel is over here on the right. It looks kind of like layers. You can sort of move things around and put them exactly where you want to. But you can select multiple of these. And so I can sort of make a selection within your image. And you can see if you select multiple image with shift click, it just puts them to the side, which if you're building an Omni reference right now, they only let you upload one. Lewis, I love the tree character. Thank you. I thought he was cute. And little version of my Glibatree icon. And it stacks the part we selected. So it keeps track of sort of what we've selected in here and stacks them together if you multi-select. So I'm using shift to do that. we have the power to kind of create a collection, which just makes this sort of into a folder. And we'll see kind of the value of that later. If you remember from my video, we sort of have one reference on the left, one reference on the right, and then something in the middle. And we can kind of use this collection image to generate more versions of our tree image. So even if we did nothing else with our tool and we just build stitches, this kind of speeds up that workflow of like, hey, I want to download this stitched image. This is the thing we put Jasmine in the video. But I will kind of go click into the editor, click new, and I will drag in what we just downloaded. So that's our stitched collection. And we can kind of see that the power of this is to kind of essentially have an image reference describing the composition. We use the content of the image itself to describe the character that we're trying to create. And then in here, right, and this is just sort of a theoretical right now. How do I have masthead for making character different ages via OREF? I'm not sure exactly how do I have a masthead? I'm not sure what that means. But feel free to let me know. So the idea here is we can use the kind of content within the image itself. And that's where the name ImageRAG comes from, is you kind of, in text models, you're able to kind of generate a bit of text based on context. And here, we're sort of pulling context in. Retrieval Augmented Generation. That's what RAG stands for. And the idea is that, sort of like text, if you're bringing the kind of, if you're in text, if you're like, oh, I'm bringing in a Wikipedia article so I don't lie and make things up as a large language model, we're doing the same thing. Instead of putting text in the context right before we generate, we're putting literal images within the context of what the image model churns through on the basis of, hey, this image model kind of goes through, a diffusion process of like looking at the left and looking at the right and figuring out what goes in the middle. So we kind of see what happens if we put a specific thing saying cartoon style of 3 side-by-side images, cartoon style of 3 side-by-side drawings of the same tree character, and then we'll describe what we want them to look like in the center. Autospells messes up with another comment. These things happen. And we basically want to describe what that pose is, because our image reference is basically saying, put the third tree here. This is saying what the tree looks like, and our prompt gets to say what is actually going to go in that. And we'll sort of talk about some ways this is useful later on, but just having a consistent character in the editor kind of means the world. So we'll say happy tree character, both arms up over his head. Now, this isn't 100% reliable, but we can kind of see what happens here. I'll just add a high image weight just to help improve the reliability of it actually happening, but we'll kind of see what this generates. And this was sort of the thing I noticed when I was working with Angel Character. I made a video 6 months ago that putting this and this into the scene made it really effective at being able to get exactly what we were after. ChatGPT or Midjourney is crashing. You can see sort of behind, let me refresh. Refresh one more time. All while I'm doing, can I download the image? Yeah, I can. So I'll show you all of these. Midjourney is not as reliable as my tool. What? No, but let's see. So we kind of have these 3 images that are all, in theory, my character, but new poses that I've never had before. And that's sort of the theory that led me to being like, hey, I should make this. Because if you can do this in the editor and get another character without omnireference, or even if you had omnireference, you can kind of make changes to and invent new poses for your character kind of immediately, it's like really convenient. And so we can kind of think about what I imagine sort of came next once we had sort of a stitched image with one thing on the left and one thing on the right. It does help that you can kind of put a particular scene in the middle. So if I drag this here, and instead of simply putting this is an upscaled one, so it's going to be huge. But instead of putting a character on the left and a character on the right and white in the middle, we can actually put a particular scene here. And this is really the value of the feature. And I'm not sure this scene is the one, so maybe we'll generate a fresh one in Midjourney for this tree character. So like a cartoon mountaintop, maybe. Cartoon mountaintop at sunset. Let's change the aspect ratio. Let's do something a little bit bigger because I think it helps. And the view from a cartoon mountaintop at sunset. And the idea is we can kind of like sit here on this cartoon mountaintop and put our tree into place. And basically set omnireference to 15, keep the image of the character, and alter the prompt accordingly, basic description of their height. And this is your method to making consistent character at different ages. Oh, that's exciting. I will have to try something like that. I'll have to sort of come back to this comment later. But the idea is you can now take something like this, and while it's not necessarily that cartoony, I'd see potential of your tool in one project I'd use at least on last year. So this is a ton of interest for me if you come back. Yeah, I think like not everyone's going to be ready to try this immediately, but knowing that it exists can probably help you think about how to approach your projects in a bigger way. So I think it's going to be exciting for people. So the idea is if you want to put the tree character into this scene, it's like sort of annoying once you have a scene that you've created. But I want my tree character here, and Midjourney just like doesn't do that. And it's hard to create a nice composition of a painting and have your tree character in it, especially if like where you want them is like right here, right? Like this is where the tree character is supposed to hang out. And what my tool does, I just mess with my selection before I did that. What my tool does is it makes this collection for you. So you can just like, oh, this is where the tree character goes. I would probably, before I stitched this and tried to make the change, I would probably have one version of my tree character with some background, just so we're not fighting the style too much. So I would probably just like take this as an omni reference and just say, hey, tree character at sunset. We're not getting likeness out of this, but it's helpful to tell Midjourney what the style is going to be kind of before you generate this. So if you sort of look, and I can have a higher omni weight as we generate this again. And obviously we could be a little bit more specific, but I'll kind of just for the details, cartoon tree character in the ground with glowing blue eyes, because Midjourney fights you, at sunset. And we get one. So this is kind of the idea, right? Is like, this is what our character looks like in a place. But this isn't our style or our scene. You can sort of imagine if you downloaded this and tried to put this right into the scene that we had created, it wouldn't quite work, right? It would feel kind of close, right? You can sort of do this in the editor now, which we appreciate, right? You can kind of, here, let's open in the full editor. Let's drag this in as another layer. I don't know if you guys have done this before, but now you can kind of smart select and say, hey, I just want this tree in this lighting, and I want to erase the background, and then you can hold Alt to sort of resize him without going into other tabs, and you can place him exactly where it is that you want it. And so we sort of imagined him here. But this isn't actually ideal, because once you're done, you have to kind of well, I need to erase around this whole area to make this happen, right? It's like, this is sort of what he looks like, and this needs to like add to my tree. And this is like the worst case scenario for Midjourney to do a good job at like putting him in here because, and you can say, hey, cute little tree character on the top of a mountain. And it's kind of a pain, right? And so what Midjourney does is it needs high prominence to do a good job here. And it might come up with something. And honestly, this isn't the worst result in the world because it can kind of invent something. But as you get into this part of your scene, it's hard to get it right. And actually, not that I really mind this result. It's kind of cool. But where'd that download? Sorry. Oh, I wanted to make sure I didn't actually have this here. Now download again. There we go. But instead, we have the power to kind of really let it focus on getting this really in style and really in scene. And so we kind of have this as an idea, and I would probably drag in this to sort of create a 3x3 stitch, right? So it's like, hey, this is what the 3x3 stitch might look like, right? And it's like, okay, here is my character, here is this. And now this is my image reference that's going to guide the composition of what I'm trying to create. My tool makes this like slick to sort of figure out. So I'll download this stitched image again. And now in the editor, instead of here, I can now put my tree character exactly in my scene directly as an original generation. And so the cool thing is we take this, we download and lock it. So now this is sort of the next phase of what my tool can do. There's sort of this locked state for a collection. And what the lock means is just that, hey, while I'm planning on editing this and changing it, I don't want to accidentally move something around or drag something into the collection. This needs to sort of stay put until I upload something back in, until I check in an image. And so that's something I kind of made sure happened a certain way. By the way, I worked hard making this sort of responsive, so you can kind of see how when there's not enough room on the page, these things hop into tabs. And I think that's fun and slick, and I like the way that is. And you can put this exactly where you want to. So if my face cam was a different size and I wanted to really be big in the scene, I could be like, oh, let's grab me, let's move me and make me right here. And there I am. And now there's sort of room in here for me to do everything I want to do and show it to you. Not that I actually need to be this big on the screen, but you kind of get the idea that I like making something that's going to be slick and doing exactly what we want it to. And so here we now have this locked stitch collection. So let's kind of get back on track. And if I wanted to edit a character into here, it becomes pleasant to be able to go, hey, I want to create a new character in exactly this spot. And so we defined that spot when we made this selection on our scene. And now Midjourney can create this where it focuses on exactly what your character is going to look like. And so I can drag in our thing here and I'll say side by side 3 drawings of the same cute little tree character on the top of the mountain, and it will be willing to sort of create something that fits well into this one exact spot. It's a really cool program. Hey, I appreciate that. I worked hard on kind of getting it off the ground, and we'll sort of see what comes out of it. I really want to add more and more to this sort of one place. And obviously there's a little bit of refinement when you sort of find one that fits in the lighting of this scene. Actually, if you see the front of his face, it would be kind of dark and shadowy. We kind of have that effect at sort of understanding the lighting conditions from the scene around him as we generate this character. And we have the ability in the editor to keep working on refining and getting a more higher consistent value for what this character exactly looks like. And so now you can do your work in Midjourney and make this look as close to you want it to, and keep refining and keep making it better. And even if it's not perfect, right? So this feels close to me. This feels like the stitch that or this feels like the change I wanted to make. And so it's now easy for me to come back and say, hey, this was what I created. This is what I wanted it to feel like. And now we have sort of what we originally had, and then we have what's new. And my tool, this is sort of the main purpose of the tool, is it keeps track of what you uploaded and exactly where it goes. And so if you look at it in the image itself, you can kind of see, hey, this is exactly where this goes. And this is much more in style to this scene. And honestly, in the editor, the way we did it the other way, it did a fine job, and I'm not going to kind of complain at that, but it doesn't really fit. It got sort of random in, hey, we generated something that was close enough in this sort of situation, and it put it there, but this really made it feel alive with the style that we had. And I think that's the power of having the context of the image in the concept you have here. And so being able to see, hey, these are the two side by side, making sure that you like the change that was made, seeing it in the context of kind of where it's going, loving what this looks like, you can then kind of accept all changes. And what I love even more, right, is sort of when this is done and you're sort of ready to go, you can actually refine this further, right? You can kind of say, hey, let's really get in on his face and make the faces look as right as they should be able to, right? And it's hey, I want these to kind of really feel like the exact faces as they should be, and let's make it really feel like him. And the fact that we can put this into the editor and work on it in this way is what really is unlocked by this tool, right? And so I can take, these three original ones, right, and sort of make another prompt here, right, of hey, I have a high quality stitch of 3 faces with different expressions that this character can have, and this is the ways he can look. And now I create this collection. I have this stitched image as an image reference, and then popping it back into the editor as a image prompt. Now we can say, hey, what I really want to take is this scene and download and lock this and do a better job on his face specifically. And so obviously this is low resolution. This is in the tiniest part of an image. We could sort of take this back and upscale it first, but just to kind of give you the idea, we want to click new. We want to upload what we just created and locked, and now we have refined control over, hey, what I want to work on right now is this guy's face. And what this enables for me is when someone thinks this is a painful, when someone has an AI result, they can sort of make changes at the level hey, I have revisions that I've made a paid request. I'm working on something and this is what I want it to do now. You can sort of say, hey, this doesn't look enough like this, or this doesn't look enough like this. And you can sort of make those changes in a precise way. Midjourney is sort of going crazy right now, which is the world of a demo. Let's just say 3 side by side illustrations of the same tree face. And kind of grab in our image prompt again, just to make sure it understands that it's 3, because the text does help, but I want to kind of keep that as likely as I can. I add a high image weight, though I might not add as high an image weight because the color is different. And we'll sort of submit this here. The other thing you can do in a moment like this, and somehow OmniReference was on, didn't mean to do that, is literally take things like eyes from your best images and bring them into your into this part of the image in a way that you want to refine it carefully, right? I can kind of say, you know what, I want my eye color to be right because his eyes sort of glow. So I can take this mask of my character's face and put it in exactly where I want to. Does zooming in that far not make it lose track of the overall image color and scheme? It may, but we have a little bit more like control here, and it has context of like this color, and I can see sort of the colors we've already defined. And so if I only erase enough that we don't lose that context, it should be okay, right? The lighting direction is implied in his face just a little bit. And so I might just smart select his eyes right here. And I'll hold shift to turn off the smart select on this part. And so now I can erase the background. And now I have two eyes that with my alt click, I can sort of place into the exact spot that I want them, though it's sort of big and Midjourney makes this a pain. So I may sort of, let's see, what's the best way to do this? There's not really a good way to do this in Midjourney on its own. What I would really have to do is, let's delete this. Really, the thing to do in this moment is just take this screenshot and use this one as the thing. So I'll need to grab that screenshot, save it, and pull this up. So save this, and I'll just save it to my downloads quickly. And then you have the ability to put exact eyes in the exact place, and you don't have like a whole thing going on. Lewis has a question. I'm sorry, I sort of got distracted on the kind of thick of here. So you said, is this a GPT tool? I've never purchased a GPT, so I'm curious if there'd be any updates or improvements to this tool if that is free to people who've already purchased this earlier. So this is not within OpenAI's GPT ecosystem. And actually, like what I've created doesn't have like even any AI in it at the moment. But this subscription is like, as you sort of access this tool, is something that, and it's not bad, by the way, is something that you would get any updates that come out. So as I come out up with more things within what I've released, anyone who is subscribed would immediately get access to that, because it's what in sort of the industry people call a software as a service, right? So I've created this software, and really the reason I created this as a software was because I was on calls with like all of you guys, right? Is like people had ordered these coaching calls to like spend an hour with me and learn how to do something. And I was like, hey, a lot of people have the same problem, which is like, I have something I like, but it's not quite perfect. And what I had methods to do was sort of this context building, was put this in the exact place that I want it to be. And so these eyes weren't really the problem, but I think it's fine to kind of go about that. But I want to kind of be able to sort of make changes in the way that I want to. So I sort of can put my eyes here. I can sort of refine this in a very precise detail. And instead of people hiring me to like do it for them, I can deliver this to all of you at once. And when I also have something sort of similar to a GPT, something that writes prompts for you, I can have more control over how I write prompts if it's included in the software over if it's included in something like the GPT that I release, which I still give it away for free, right? So it's like the custom GPTs that I have in ChatGPT that sort of creates a certain thing. We can say, I can say, make him surprised, right? And this is sort of the thing that I couldn't have done before, which is, the tree in the center is very surprised. And sort of like using even just as simple as text, which I couldn't do when I was in this state, right? When I had kind of an image that was all the way zoomed out and the lighting wasn't really perfect and it wasn't really the vibe. But to kind of like piece these things together, it's like so cool to be able to get there. You're over 50,000 subs now. That's great. Yeah, I am very excited to have surpassed that milestone. But to kind of be able to, thank you, I appreciate that. To be able to sort of make the surprised face that I want, that is sort of cute and in the way that I was imagining it, and then to kind of come back and say, hey, I like this. I have this stitch that I want to put into the context of my entire scene. I can grab that and say, hey, how cool is it to put it right here? And Midjourney is a little bit, as you get to the very edges of how things look, a little bit inconsistent with its exact line. So I'd be a little nervous about this, and maybe it'd be worth kind of coming back and saying, well, this isn't totally perfect. It like Midjourney moved a little bit. Maybe I clicked and dragged it a little bit. So I could say, well, something inaccurate happened. I don't want to make the change, but I'm going to be okay with accepting this. And we can kind of see that, oh, if we open this tool, it's sort of, or if we open this image on the side here, image 6, and we sort of name this as sunset scene, we can sort of have our character in the way that we want him and control things in detail. If you've done any OREF stuff with making the same room or the same place in same space in several images, I have not posted a video about it. I have experimented with things, and so there are a few ideas that I have that I think help, but it's not so easy to like turn around in a room and really feel like the same room every time unless you've already locked in style. And so I sort of have to work my way up to it in terms of videos that explain how to do that. But definitely a great idea and mission, because I think lots of people want that sort of thing. Let's see. So what I wanted to do here was to just sort of, as we get a little bigger, we can say, hey, I want to take this part of the scene. And we could just have this in a stitched collection on its own, right? So we don't need to do this reference layer thing every time. But we can sort of just make refinements to a piece where it's compared to, and we'll sort of show it off because I think it explains sort of what happens is, in a scene like this, it's pretty easy to be like, hey, I'm going to do a good job re-rendering these leaves in a certain way. Whereas if if I just sort of download and lock this on its own, I can sort of say, hey, if we had this, right, where this is kind of the version of the image that was over here, and I wanted to make a little change to it, like make him surprised, right? And I like want to redo some leaves because I don't think it came out perfectly as I look closely. When it's zoomed out like this, it's not so good at kind of having that high quality effect. And so it's like, oh, because the prominence is low and because that's far away in the scene, it's not so good at like listening to me when I say surprised face, and just sort of blurs all this stuff out and messes with it and like creates problems. Interesting. I tried it myself a few times and it kind of worked, but the results were odd. That was sort of my experience. I think you do need to be very careful with the way that you prompt it, right? It's kind of like, oh, it needs to describe the part of the Omni reference that you're going to use really well, and be careful not to mention anything that's like not supposed to go into the new generation. And so like the prompt needs to be pretty careful. And so I tend to recommend using my GPT, which is free on ChatGPT. I have a link in one of my latest videos to it, but not the most recent one. But instead of kind of trying to make changes while the character is like in the corner and small, it's way easier to sort of make those changes when that character is like centered and looking great, right? So now we can sort of say, hey, this is how our character should be in this moment. And you can sort of redo some leaves within the context and lighting to sort of reference what you asked, hold to the moon, and kind of make a change here and say, hey, I want this to feel like it's a little bit better in the context of the ground and understand the scene more. And because the prominence is higher and everything is more clear and visible to Midjourney, it's going to do a better job kind of making changes to the thing that we highlight, and it's going to understand more context because we brought in more things. So this is control over what is in the context of Midjourney's image, and it lets us really have a lot of clarity in what it is we want to work on and how we want to approach it. And so if I download this image and put it back into my collection by just checking it in right here, we get the same situation that we had before of here's our little change. I just dragged in the same image. Let me reject that. This is why I like to see what I did. Old, new, and it fixes the little mess that got made because Midjourney is not 100% on the line of like where the pixel ends up being. It just sort of gets close with what it lets you generate and then uses an exact aspect ratio that it knows how to do. And so my tool kind of like fits that all together again, but we still need to kind of see it within the context of our scene. But now we sort of have no stitch error, right? If there was a line here, we would see that here, but because it's a little bit bigger and it's not totally tiny, Midjourney hasn't scaled so much and we get a higher quality answer. And now it's just our tree on the top of a mountain looking kind of exactly how we want him to. So I'll accept that change, and I find this level of control is really, really handy and lets you create some really interesting things. And we can do the sort of same thing with prominence and say, hey, I want to have a flock of X kind of bird in this area, where in this scene, right, if we kind of go back to, where was it? Here. If we kind of go back to one of these, and it's like, if you say, hey, I want to have a tree with seagulls flying in the sky, it does, because it's like not that clear, seagulls flying in the sky, and maybe it's prominent enough that it'll do an okay job, but to sort of say, hey, I want really the silhouette of seagulls right by the sun, or something along those lines, as you sort of have a small area, it like sort of makes a mess out of these, in my experience. And yeah, this happened, right? The editor is like, okay, maybe if it makes big ones, you kind of get ones that look pretty good. But if otherwise, it's like, okay, they sort of become the mess that aren't what you want. And so to be able to sort of highlight something and say, hey, I want to just work on this portion. I wish I was in my tool. I want to just work on this portion of the image, make a change in this way, and say, hey, I want to work on this here, or this here, or this here, and kind of like make those changes and then kind of come back to what you had. If I go too close to the edge, this is a business decision we made. We make the thing smaller, but I'm not sure that's totally necessary. But yeah, that's kind of the flow of the tool. The one thing I didn't kind of talk about in this overview, and I want this to be somewhat digestible, so I'm not going to stream for too much longer, but I want to mention that when you make changes to a collection, you're making changes to every element, right? So if you download and lock this and you want to give all three of these guys a nose, you can do that, right? It's like, okay, new, we will drag in this guy here, and we want to like say, hey, close up to the same tree character side by side. The tree has a cute button nose, and sort of like set this up in that cute way and say, okay, I now have room to put my cute button nose type vibe into here, and Midjourney will generate this into pieces. Or generate these three pieces all at once, and then we make those changes to all 3, 4, 5 of our images. And if we like the button nose that it created here, 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 or here, we can say, oh, I want to use it, or not. And so we can kind of say, hey, we like this one, for example, and so let's kind of go through and show off this nose, and this is how it looks. And now there's room to sort of put this nose in here. And now it has the context to actually kind of finish this off in theory, right? This is sort of the controllability editing that you want to be able to do. And it should, again, it helps to have a little bit more. I could drag one in, but I'm hoping to get one here. There you go. All right, and so now we have 3 of the same noses on this character. We can make that change on all 3 of the characters at once, so that when we upload the change, this comes in, it keeps track of old, new, and you can look and say, hey, how does this guy look with a nose? How does this guy look with a nose? And kind of simplify that process of making changes to all your characters throughout all of your scenes all at once. Zachary, you're going to look at my OREF character aging thing. I'm going to have to come back to that another time, but I will look into it. So what you said was if you set your OREF low enough and have a stylize or a if you set your OREF low enough and then have a style reference leading to for the age, you can kind of re-age the character you have. It seems cool. I wanna play with it on my own before I do it on a stream, but it sounds exciting. All right. Thank you all for being here. This was fun. I wanted to go over this and make it so that it's clear for somebody who just gets that overview of this tool before they buy it, or after they buy it and they want to like really understand what these 3 different pieces are. So we've got projects, we've got images that you can drag around, you can build collections, and that controls, and you can build collections in a specific order to create stitches, lock them, make particular changes, and change everything you want to at once. If you guys have any questions, yeah, feel free to send me a message on Discord. You can also send me an email or post in the comments. Thank you all so much. Yeah, Zachary, please send me a Discord. I'm curious about it. All right, cool. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.